Hi folks, I'm back with another vinyl update. I had hoped that this one would deal with the stuff I'd bought at the January's Kendal Record Fair, but unfortunately the weather here in Cumbria put pay to go into that. On the day that it was happening there was a lot of snow and ice over the fells and we didn't fancy driving over there. So gives me a chance to catch up on some of the other stuff I've bought in the meantime, which as ever is a lot. First up, now I've been listening to music, collecting music for 40 odd years, more than I care to remember, but in that time I was never really into jazz. I like my jazz rock fusion ever since I heard Soft Machine 7 in the early 70s, but jazz proper was never something I really got into, though in the last few years I've started to get more interest in this, and that's increased over this last 6 months to a year. It's all started after hearing John Coltrane's A Love Supreme, which is, as everybody knows, is a superb classic. So yeah, I'm trying to get into jazz a bit more. I don't know much about it. I couldn't really speak about it with any sort of authority. But one of the artists I've always wanted to try, because a lot of people recommend him, is Sun Ra. Now his discography is a total minefield. There is so much of it on so many different labels. But I've dipped my toes in, and these two records arrived yesterday. The first is Angels and Demons at Play by Sun Ra and his Myth Science Orchestra. Upon listening to this yesterday, the first side, very percussion based and fairly avant-garde, and I had to look twice to see that it was recorded between 1955 and 57. It sounds so much of maybe the late 60s, early 70s to me. The second side is more what I expected, more horn based, but I really enjoyed this. This is on the Saturn US label, and I will definitely be trying out more Sun Ra in the months to come. The second album of his that I got was The Magic City by Sun Ra and his Solar Orchestra. Now I can't tell you what this sounds like because I haven't listened to it. Unfortunately, this is so badly warped I didn't dare play it, so this is going to have to go back and hopefully I'll get a replacement. But the bits I've heard on YouTube sound really good, so it's a shame about that. It's the first one I've had to send back. I mean, Angels and Demons had a little bit of a warp, but was still perfectly playable. But this one, no thanks. Let's go on to next. A 10-incher by, I think, the Swedish space rock band Yuri Gagarin. Sea of Dust. Nice package this. There you go. Great cover. Now this has been put out by Sound Effect Records of Greece. I think this was originally released just as a 7-inch, but this is superb driving space rock. I'd go and check out their album as well. That's an excellent. Their album is excellent, full album. And then my last video, I mentioned that I'd discovered VinylNet and had been ordering stuff from them. So I've been buying some more stuff at really decent prices. Now I'm not one usually for having multiple copies of an album, different pressings, but the first two I'm going to show are just that. And the first one is Tangerine Dreams. If I pronounce it right, Quixote. Now this was recorded live in East Berlin, I think, in January 1980. And this is the original East German pressing on Amiga. It was remixed and with a new cover put out by Virgin later on, which I have the copy and I can't remember the title of it for this. But they also switched the two sides, so part one became part two and vice versa. But I mean, this is the Edgar Froese, Chris Franke, Johannes Schmerling lineup, which is about the last lineup that I particularly liked, though I've heard quite decent things about the more recent post-Froese version of Tangerine Dream, which I'll have to investigate. But this is an enjoyable live album. Next up is one of the earliest albums I ever bought and one of my all-time favourites, Camembert Electrique by Kong. And this is the original UK pressing on Virgin, or rather Caroline, I think it was. I had this way back in the early 70s. Unfortunately, when I switched to CDs, it was one of the albums I got rid of. A year or so ago, I bought the reissue, but I've always wanted to have, more for sentimental reasons, I think, but I've always wanted to get this one back again. An absolute classic of an album, and one that I think everybody should have in their collection. Probably my favourite of their albums, maybe just slightly ahead of You. Right. Next, as I've said, this band got me into music in the first place, Focus. And this is the later album, I can't remember what year it came out. Anyway, this was post Jan Ackerman, with Philip Catherine and Yves Albers on guitar. Bert Reuter was still there and Steve Smith was on drums. It's not by any means anywhere near their best album, but the weird thing about this is it features PJ Proby, the famous trouser splitter, on vocals on some tracks. How they came to get together, I don't know. Anyway, there is some decent stuff on here. Things like Sneezing Bull and Wingless are good tracks. I prefer I think the live versions. If you get the live at the BBC album that was from this sort of period, the versions on there are better, but it helps to complete my Focus collection. Next up, my first by this band, If, and their album If 3. If are a superb jazz rock band from the UK, deserve to be far better known, featuring the superb saxon flute player Dick Morrissey. The other star on this is, I think, Terry Smith on guitar, excellent guitarist. This is considered by many to be their best album. I think they did 5 and then split. Then I think they were reconstituted with a different lineup. And I think there was a recent If album released in the last couple of years, which I didn't hear great things about, but I've never heard. This is an original UK pressing on United Artists, and I'm really pleased to have this, my first of theirs. Next up, staying with jazz rock, 3 albums by the same band, Now I've got these albums on CD, but I can't believe I've never owned any vinyl by this band. Don't know why. And what we have is the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So I bought 3 albums. The Inner Mountain Flame. This is obviously the lineup with Billy Cobham, Rick Laird, John Hammer and Jerry Goodman. Alongside that, excuse me, Birds of Fire, possibly my favourite of theirs. I think this is the same lineup. And the third that I got was Apocalypse. Now this is with the London Symphony Orchestra. This is a later lineup with Jean-Luc Ponty and Gail Moran and who else? Michael Walden on here as well. Good album. I prefer the earlier ones, but this is still an excellent album. And produced by the great George Martin. Except these are the first time I've had anything on vinyl by the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And for 5 or 6 quid each. Excellent. Right, next up, a new album I bought, Foundation. Now Foundation were a duo, French duo of show the inside. A married couple, the married couple, Ananka Ragel on she's on vocals and organ, claviers, and even Coquette on guitars, bass, and electronics. Now this is sort of avant-garde ambient electronics. It's the duo released 3 cassettes back in the 80s, and this is the 3rd of those, which I think was released in 1983. It's a concept album based on this. Oh, sorry, I should have said what the album's called. It's called La Vasse Blanche, which means the white ship, and it's based on the story of the same name by H.P. Lovecraft. So what you get is, among the electronic tracks, you get recitations from the story by Ananka. I wouldn't call this a classic, but it's well worth having. And I think Bureau B have done another album. This is on a new label, Tunnel Vision Records, French label, who are going to, I think, release a lot of the sort of 80s, 90s electronic avant-garde material, and a lot of it which came out on cassette only. But Bureau B have done an album of theirs as well, a compilation album of the best tracks, I think, from the 3 cassettes they did. Should mention that I know Ivan Coquette from the superb duo Spacecraft with John Livengood. They did an excellent album called, I think, Paradox, which is I really like. This is worth having, really good. Next up, sticking with electronics but more modern, we have Craven Falls with their album. Well, it's classed as an EP, a 12-inch EP, Netherfield Works. It consists of 2 16-minute tracks. Now, I don't know who Craven Falls are. I've got a feeling it's just one guy. This is, I think, their first release. But this could have come out of Cologne or Dusseldorf in the 70s. It is that pure Kosmische Elektronika work. I think this is excellent, particularly the second track, is it Tentaground? check it out if you can. If you like your, you know, your clusters and your early Kraftwerk and Harmonia, things like that, I think you'll like this. And next, one of my favourite groups, Hot Tuna, live at the Fillmore West on the 3rd of July 1971, which I think this was the last Saturday of the Fillmore West being open. This is an excellent live album. It's on the Keyhole label. It's not a legitimate release, but it's a good recording of the band. Along with Corcoran and Cassidy, you have Papa John Creech on violin and Sammy Piazza on drums. I think they've made a mistake here and shown Will Scarlett on harmonica, who played earlier but wasn't on this album. Excellent blues rock with Cassidy's superb bass and Corcoran's sublime guitar. Brilliant. And I'm going to finish off with 3 box sets that I've bought over the last 2 or 3 months. And the first just arrived yesterday, and that's John Barleycorn Reborn, Dark Britannica. Superb set. Now this was originally released a few years back as a double CD. Comes with a nice booklet with notes on. This deals with the dark side of British folk, paganism, weird rites, etc. You get, and it wasn't, like I say, it was originally a double CD, and it comes on 4 vinyl albums. A lot of these acts are fairly obscure ones, but you do have people like the Owl Service and Sharon Krause who are more well known. But these are brilliant. I've got this on CD, and there are 3 other volumes against double CDs, which I've also got. I hope Burning World, who have done this, follow this up with the other 3 volumes, even though they would be expensive. The only problem with volume 1 is the same problem they had with the CD notes, in that a lot of these acts, like I say, are fairly obscure, and it doesn't really give you anything about them other than the name and the track that they're performing. On the next 3 volumes, it actually details a little bit about each band and each singer. But other than that, if you like British folk, I would highly recommend this 4 LP set. It's beautifully produced, excellent stuff. Because I don't think these CDs are available anymore, though you probably might be able to find them second hand. Right. The next one, staying with British folk, is the Bert Jansch set, A Man I'd Rather Be, Part 1. Now this comprises his first, I think, 4 albums. That being Bert Jansch from 1965, It Don't Bother Me, again from 1965, Jack Orion, one of his best albums, from 1966. In fact, his version of the title track I prefer to Pentangles. And the duo album, Bert and John, his album with John Renbourn. The only problem with this, it's a lovely book form, but you don't get the original covers, which I like to have. And it would have been nice to have a booklet with it, maybe, but all you get is these notes. But it's, like I say, it's really well produced. It's on Earth vinyl, and there's going to be a follow-up part 2 which I've ordered with the next 4 albums, because again, and that I've got virtually everything on CD, but again, first time for vinyl for me. And finally we go back to electronic music, and we have this box set by Ian Boddy, Spectroscopic 1979 to 1982. Now if you don't know Ian Boddy, he's probably one of the best known names in British electronic music, not modern style electronica, but more the sort of Berlin style of electronic music. He started off by doing 3 cassettes. This is a limited edition 483 or 500. That's the notes from it. And again, you don't get the original covers, but you get the 3 albums, the 3 cassettes put onto album. Those being Images from 79-80, Elements of Chance from 1981, and Options from 1982. Now this one I've got the original cassette for, and I was so pleased because I never got round to getting the other 2 cassettes, and they're impossible to find now. So I was really pleased that this was reissued on vinyl. Sorry, it's on the Vinyl on Demand label, an excellent label that does a lot of these cassette culture releases from the 80s and 90s. I've got an album that they did of Peter Fromada stuff. I don't think they might be going anymore, which is a shame. I think they might have packed in now. But check them out. Check Vinyl on Demand out. If you like avant-garde and electronic music, there's a lot of stuff, good stuff on there. Asmus Teachings and others. Anyway, that's it. Hopefully I'll be doing another video soon. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and you saw something that tickles your fancy, as they say. Anyway, all the best. Bye.